Welcome to Economics 1010. This is Chapter 3. I'm your professor, Stephen Wallen. All right, here we go. Supply and demand is what we're looking at today. Explain why people participate in markets. They got reasons. I'd assume, I'd hope so. Describe what market demand and supply measure. Okay, depicting why a market equilibrium is found. Illustrate how and why demand supply curves sometimes shift. Explain how market shortages and surplus occur. I'm going to give you a very clear warning. This is the most important chapter we're going to cover, period, is chapter 3. This is the basis of economics as far as when it gets complicated with math, okay? This is how you conceptualize supply and demand. A lot of people have heard of supply and demand. We always think about supply and demand. This is how you actually look at it, graph it, and this is how it actually works, okay? Pay attention. It's going to help you. Here we go. The goal of this chapter is to assess how markets function, okay? Billions of consumers and producers engage in economic activity. Surprise, surprise, okay? Each participant has specific goals, okay? This is something to keep in mind. My goals in the market might not be your goals in the market. I want different things, you want different things, and we're going to participate differently, okay? However, the way they put it up is with groups of participants, okay? We have a consumer group. Maximize happiness or satisfaction from goods or services. This is what we as consumers like to do. Why do I go get video games? So I have more happiness and satisfaction. Why do I go get ice cream? More happiness and satisfaction. Okay? And the key word is maximize. We're trying to figure out the best set that of things that I can get as far as goods and services that make me happy and satisfied. Okay? Businesses have another goal. Their goal is to maximize profits. Okay, that is their number one goal. That is why they are made. Which means sometimes they have competing interests within a business, such as the environment and things like that. Their number one goal is to maximize profits, and sometimes that overrides that. And we get issues, and that's why we have regulations and other things like that. And sometimes just their corporate image will help them change that if they have other competing values. Okay. But the number one value of a business is to maximize profits. That's it. And as an economist, everything else is sort of secondary. And everything else that's secondary is usually to lead to that primary, which is maximize profits. Government, though, is to maximize societal welfare. They want to make things better for everyone. Okay, so there's a good or service that makes more sense to have it spread across. They'll work on doing that, whether they have to do it by themselves as a government entity or whether they do it with a business and say, hey, you can be a monopoly in this case, but we're going to regulate you heavily, okay? And this is what we see a lot of times with a lot of utilities or things like that. It's a natural monopoly where it doesn't make sense for everyone to have like 10 different water pipes going to their houses. You have one water pipe that's provided by one person who's in charge of water in your area, but that should be heavily regulated by the government to make sure they're not taking advantage of you, and they have standards. So they're looking at societal welfare. So overall, we got three people. Consumers, happiness, satisfaction. Businesses, maximize profit. They're looking for one thing, and that's money. In fact, that's their legal duty as a corporation. If it's a corporation, their legal duty is to their investors and owners to maximize profits. Okay? And then government maximizes societal welfare. However, everybody's constrained by limited resources and the way they interact with one another. Okay? Markets maximize the return on limited resources. Okay, a market is any place where goods are bought and sold. The reason why they say a market maximizes return on limited resources, because they're going to go with whatever price signals there are so that we're using goods effectively. Okay, that's their reason of why it's being maximized in a market setting. Okay, two distinct markets are factor markets and product markets. What are they talking about? Factor markets, product markets? Okay. First, what is a market? Okay, most people think wherever and whenever an exchange takes place. So is the internet a marketplace? Yes. If there's exchanges taking place there, wherever, whenever. Okay, that's considered as a market. This is how the general set of our markets look like. Okay, number one, we start with businesses. Okay, so you have businesses on the right, and then guess what businesses do? They give us goods and services. Okay, and that's a product market. Okay, because those are products. Goods and services are a product for us. Okay, and these goods and services are demanded, and we as consumers buy them, okay? So businesses provide goods and services, which are products, okay? And then we consume these because with demand as consumers, However, our business is going to give it to us for free? Probably not. Okay. Another thing they add in here is foreign market participants. So if you have outside markets, those can also end up in your product market. So even though you have a large domestic market, you can have foreign markets also intertwining a bit, so you get more things available to you as a consumer. However, as a consumer, the main thing is factor of production is what you guys do. Consumers provide this. Consumers are labor. Consumers are entrepreneurs. Consumers have capital and they can invest in businesses, okay? Consumers also have land to a degree, okay? However, a lot of that we mainly do with consumers is our time and labor. That's the main thing. But all the other things can be possible factors as well. And basically consumers, all the consumers together make up these factors of production, and that's a factor market, okay? And of course, there's also foreign participants. You can get your labor done overseas, things like that, products from overseas as far as businesses are concerned. And then businesses need these factors to make more goods and services. And so it just goes over and over and over again. And the only thing you have to really pertain to is this, is we have our own domestic market, but then we have foreign markets that both participate in the product markets and factor markets, okay? So foreign markets are bringing in goods and services like Japanese VCRs and cars, and at the same time, we also have foreign market participants where we could be bringing in foreign engineers, okay? Things like that. In between all of this, between the product and the factor markets, we have the governments, okay? And the government kind of goes through and checks to see how things are going, and they're kind of regulating this whole entity, okay? Nearly every market transaction involves an exchange of dollars for goods or services, okay? Obviously, money plays a critical role in facilitating market exchanges and specialization. Okay, specialization is the main thing. When you can buy things and you can focus on one thing because you can then use money to get what else you don't produce, it allows you to specialize, okay? Some transactions involve barter. Barter is the same thing where you trade good for good or service or service for good, but you're not requiring money, okay? Bartering is limited because it requires sellers to want what buyers are offering. So if I have an abundance of eggs and I need you to fix my shoe, but you don't like eggs, I then have to find someone who does like eggs, and I have to do this big chain reaction in order to somehow get my shoes fixed, okay? We get a whole bunch of people involved, and we have to do a whole bunch of trading because we're not using money. But if we have money, we can set the value of a good or service to a degree based on supply and demand, what people are willing to buy and willing to sell at. And you can store the value of that money. So even if, let's say I had an abundance of eggs today, well, what happens if I have to hold on to those eggs for a week? Or 2 weeks, or a month? Well, I need to sell them now. And then I need to have that money, so when I need things later, I have money for stuff, okay? And so it allows you to get what you need now, and store value, and set value prices, okay? And actually be able to see what's there, and the set value prices are done by the market. So, two sides of each market transaction are called supply and demand, okay? Supply, individuals supply labor, firms supply goods and services. So on that one little graph we saw before, that pictorial, okay? Individuals supply labor, that's what they supply, and the firms supply goods and services. And the reverse is true, individuals demand goods and services, and firms demand factors of production. That's what allows this to keep going on in our economy, okay? If anyone stopped doing one of these things as far as a group as a whole, so if individuals in general just said, we're not supplying labor anymore, will that shut down the economy? Yes. In fact, that's what we do when we get angry. And it's happened in many different countries for many different reasons. They show a force like, you know what? We're shutting down. And guess what happens? Then everyone else will start saying, okay, maybe we need to change things in the economy because obviously labor wasn't happy. Okay? Firms supply goods and services. Possible they could do a shutdown of some sort. Okay? Demand. Individual demand for goods and services. Firms demand factor production. And so if any of these things get interrupted, it affects the whole rest of the economy. Okay? The demand exists only if someone is both willing and able to pay for good. Okay, this is the big thing. Everybody wants like $1 billion house. They don't make $1 billion houses. It's usually in the millions. Okay? Let's put it in $1 million house. Something realistic. And there's actually are a few of those on the market. Okay, if you want one, they're definitely available. They can get up to like 300 million, stuff like that. You can get some crazy high ones, but usually you start in the million for those luxury houses. Demand exists only if someone is both willing and able to pay. Okay, so I was getting off topic there. The main thing, though, how many people actually have that $1 million for a $1 million type house luxury mansion? Not very many people. So even if, let's say, 100% of the people wanted it, but only 5% were willing to pay for it, then you'd only have 5% there. Okay, and the other thing it says willing and able to pay. You might have a lot of people able to pay it and just not want it. So, for example, let's say we had, I don't know, the old Halloween candy that was orange and black and waxy and terrible. Everyone, for a degree, has money to pay for it, but people just don't want it. Okay, so that also equates to the actual demand. So demand has to be willing and able. So have the money and wants it. If either one of those is taken away, you are not counted in demand. Okay. Willingness to pay is determined by one's income and opportunity cost. Okay. So in other words, when I'm looking, if I want something, I'd say, well, maybe I don't need that $1 million house. Maybe I'm fine with, heaven forbid, a $200,000 house or a $100,000 house. This definitely would take a lot of people out from that demand because they can look and see what other things they could buy. What's the opportunity cost? Because then I could do a $200,000 house and have $800,000 left to go do something else with if I actually had $1 million to spend on housing. Okay. Demand is an expression of buyer's intentions, not a statement of actual purchase. So we just have to know, would you be willing to and are you able? You don't have to actually have done it. It's just, is it there? Okay, is it a possibility? And it's only a possibility if they're willing and able. Demand can be illustrated using a demand schedule or demand curve. So a demand schedule is like the table, okay? That's where they go through and they show you the table of it. The demand curve is on the graph. Show consumers quantities demanded at alternate price levels. Okay, this is one thing. This is where we all get thrown off, and they don't do a good job in the book because people get just it just throws them off. Okay, demand is the entire line. Okay, if it's quantity demanded, that's a point on the line. So what we do is we take all the quantities demanded. We say at this price, how much is demanded? 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 We get every single point, and that makes up the whole demand curve. Okay, so the demand curve is a whole bunch of points, and every single one of those points is called a quantity demanded, and it's going to be at a different price level. Okay, so again, a point, quantity demanded. Demand curve, that's the whole line. Again, quantity demanded is a point. Demand curve is the entire line. If you mix up the vocabulary, things get very frustrating when you're trying to understand questions, okay? And also, as always, it's in a given time period, holding everything constant. We're looking at this as a model, okay? Does not indicate why willing to pay, okay? We're not going to do psychoanalysis on people. We just need to know, at this price level, do you want it? Yes or no? We're putting them down. There's a lot of different reasons why people want things, and we're not going to go into that, okay? So here we got the left and the right. Okay, so on the very left side, we can see we have the demand schedule, okay? We have that table. And then on the right, we got the graph. So let's take a look at this, okay? As price changes, there is a movement along the demand curve. So we take that schedule, we can take A and plot it on there. We can plot A for the $50 of price and how many tutoring hours are demanded, okay? And we look at this and we see that demand does what? It slopes downward, okay? It's an inverse relationship, okay? As price is high, not very many people want it, but as we go down the curve, though, and prices go down, more people want it, okay? So another thing also to help you with is demand is downward, okay? Demand is down, okay? You slope it downward. You start up high and you go down the hill, okay? And if you look at this is what you have. If you were to take that schedule, you plot out every point, and then you just connect the points, that does the curve. So if I talk about A, B, C, E, F, G, H, I, those are all quantities demanded. They're points. But if I'm talking about the demand curve, I'm talking about every single point on that line. So when we start getting into shifts, that's important, okay? All right, I think you guys are good on that. But in general, what can we tell? As price changes, more people are now willing and able if you're looking at a market, okay? willing and able as far as people changing, and if there's more people changing, then we add them into demand, okay? And it kind of goes down there and shows a point. As price falls, quantity demanded increases. So each point on there increases, okay? The law of demand states that the quantity demanded increases as price falls in a given time period. Ceteris paribus. So again, ceteris paribus is if everything else remains the same. And that's just the way it is. Quantity demanded will increase as price falls, because then more people are willing and more people are able. It's going to affect one of those two things. One of those things are going to be affected, okay? It's negative inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. That's why it slopes downward, okay? Slopes downward. Demand holds all other influences constant and studies the relationship between price and quantity demanded. So they're going to go over that again. Demand depends on other influences called determinants of demand. What things affect our demand? These are them. Tastes, okay? Styles of things. Do we have trends? Do we have what things people like? Yeah, that's going to affect demand. Income. If I just don't have the disposable income, there's things I just can't buy and be a part of on the demand curve, okay? I'm just not going to be a part of there. Other goods. All right? If apples are super expensive, maybe I'll switch to oranges or vice versa, okay? You can substitute goods. You have complementary goods, okay? Other goods are going to affect demand. Expectations. Do I think this is going to be more expensive in the future? Do I think I'll need it in the future? Okay. So for example, if there's a giant storm coming, chances are generators are going to become very expensive very quickly. Okay. Because there's going to be a lot more people demanding it. Okay. And demand itself will end up shifting out as far as the demand curve itself. So. Oh man, that's it. I mean, if you look at that, those are the things that make up demand, and these things can definitely change demand as far as where we are on the curve, okay, and shifting curves. Okay, these determinants are held constant when analyzing the relationship between price and quantity demanded. So once we have these, we hold them constant, okay, and you can only say this changes and then move it, but we're saying that while we're working with it, these things remain the same, okay. Model focuses on one or two influences at a time. So that's the thing, is we're only looking at one at a time when we do change stuff. And we're looking at independent variable that then will change all the dependent variables. So independent influences price and has on consumption. Price is more likely to change on any given day than other influences on demand. Okay. Does price fluctuate every day? Yeah, you go on Amazon, you go to any marketplace, prices constantly change. And those prices, based on what the current market price is, that's going to affect your demand for that product. However, is demand line actually changing? No, just the quantity demanded. You're going up and down the quantity demanded. Demand itself isn't shifting, okay? Just the quantity demanded. So they need to be a little bit better on the terminology here as far as price. Price will only affect quantity demanded, okay? Demand remains unchanged so long as the underlying determinants of demand remain constant. A change in one of the determinants of demand causes the quantity demanded to change at each fixed price. Okay, so now here they're getting a little bit more specific, just saying, hey, price is independent over here. We have a demand curve going this way. Okay, demand curve's this way. Price is here. If I go and set the price at different levels, I'm just hitting the curve at different points. I'm not moving the curve. I'm just moving along the curve, okay? I'm not changing where the curve's at. Okay, a change in demand causes the entire curve to shift. So that's the main thing. Price will just choose where you hit the line, but an actual demand shift, something that changes why people want something, is going to shift the entire curve at all different price levels. All right, when demanded changes quantity, demand changes at each price, okay? Okay, demand curve shifts right, it increases. If it shifts left, it decreases. Basically, anything that's shifting inward, you got to decrease, okay? If you're shifting outward, you're increasing. A change in price causes a movement. Okay, now they're being specific. This is good. A change in price causes a movement along the demand curve, not a shift. Again, that is the most important thing. A change in price causes a movement along the demand curve, not a shift. Most people do not understand this, and they think price is changing demand. No, the demand's always there. It's always there. It's on the line, quantity demand. We say at this price, this many people want it, this price, this many people want it. It's just, the thing that actually matters, though, are the shifts in demand, because that moves everybody's demand, okay? So here we go. This is going to be illustrated. $35. We're going to have 5 people wanting it, okay? Is the demand change yet? No, the demand line remains the same, okay? And if we go to D3 here, let's say I change the price down to $25. How many people want it now? 11, okay? Did I change how valuable tutoring was to people? No, so the line didn't change. We just moved along the line. So pricing going up or down, you're moving on the line, okay? However, a demand shift is going to move the line, okay? This is a shift in demand. Let's say finals are next week, okay? Finals are next week. All of a sudden, everybody wants more tutoring, okay? Well, that's going to cause a shift in demand, so it's shifting outward. Notice how it's going away from the 0 point on the bottom left. It's shifting out. Now, no matter where you are on that new line, everything is going to have a lot more demand per price. Whether you're charging 35, 25, 15, there's going to be more people wanting it no matter what price you put it at compared to what price it used to be, okay? So right here, D2, if I keep the price the exact same at 35, and all of a sudden more people now want it because there's an actual increase in demand. Demand is now actually increased. We're not just changing price. There's only an increase in demand because there's an actual need difference or a want difference. Now I'm getting 11 people wanting it at 35. Okay? That's an increase in demand. So again, whenever I talk about demand or you hear demand said by itself, that's requiring the entire line, and that's a shift. If it's quantity demanded, you're just moving a point along a line. All right. Market demand is the total quantities people are willing and able to buy at alternative pricing and time. So and now, we're looking at this. Market demand is determined by tastes, incomes, expectations, other goods, and also number of buyers, okay? If you have a market and all of a sudden you have a lot more buyers enter the market, that's going to also push up demand because there's more people there to buy in general, okay? Let's go ahead and take a look at this, okay? Market demand is the sum of individual demands, okay? So everybody wanting it is how we get total demand. So right here they got Tom, George, and Lisa, okay? They didn't do the math very well on this. They're off on their math. Because Tom and George together should be 6, and they put 5. The book is not always right. You gotta check it, okay? Price per hour is 45. Total quantity demanded is 5. Okay, so we're assuming George or Tom at this point lost an hour because they didn't record the table right. They even went through and showed plus symbols here, and they weren't able to do it right. Wow. That is something. All right, so 2 plus 4 equals 6. Does not equal 5. We'll see what they actually ended up plotting on the graph for us. All they're trying to illustrate, though, and this is the main point, what are they trying to illustrate? You take everybody's individual demand and you add it up, and that gives you the quantity demanded for that market. So if I had a market of 100 people in a market, and it's a regional market, and I took everybody's demand and said, okay, how much do you want at this price for every single item? Then I could go through and add all that together and get the demand for the market, okay? If you look at this, every single time on that curve, what's it say? Quantity demanded. So quantity demanded means these are going to give us our points. So A is a point, B is a point, C is a point, D is a point, E is a point. All these are quantity demanded, giving a specific price, okay? And we put all those together, every single point becomes a line, and that line is actual demand, okay? So then we get B. 5 plus 11. Okay, that's actually 16. They did a good job on that one, okay? Next. Okay, if you see, the individuals are increasing, and every individual is at a different rate. So Lisa is finally wanting stuff. And so now we're at 30 at 25. And then we have price per hour. We go to D, and then E. Okay, so it goes through and adds all these up. So then we have these points out there, okay? And we put them on there. So A, B, C, D, E. That's all you do to plot the curve, okay? Useful business to understand how much consumers are willing to spend at different prices. So right here we can kind of see it's not always moving at a straight line. You're going to have a curve in demand. It's not usually just a straight line. There's going to be a slope, and so you kind of find this efficiency point where you can get more people, but then you have to compare that to, are you actually making more revenue versus your cost, okay? And we get all into that in future chapters. Overall, all you have to know, we take all the individuals, we add them together, that gives us total quantity demanded, and then we put those quantity demanded on the graph, and we can draw a line. That's all you got to know on that part, okay? The market supply reflects the collective behavior of all firms that are willing and able to sell goods at various prices. Does this sound familiar? This might sound familiar. Yes, willing and able to sell, okay? So it's the same thing as demand, okay? We don't count them as part of supply. If they're not willing and able to sell, they're not part of supply, okay? And remember, we hold everything else constant, okay? And the thing about supply is quantity supply increases as its price increases. So that means if people are paying more, people are willing to supply more, okay? We're willing to do more to get more. It's just all there is to it, okay? And it's positive. It's a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. Okay, supply holds all their influences constant and studies the relationship between price and quantity supplied. Things that will affect your supply, the determinants of supply. Technology, okay? If all of a sudden you become really good at producing something, you can shift the entire supply curve. And remember, this is going to actually be this way, okay? It's positive. You can actually shift this outward, okay? And you can shift factor costs, okay? If factors become cheaper, like your resources, that can grow. If factors become more expensive, it can retract. It can go backwards. Taxes and subsidies, if you get a tax break, it should allow you to supply more, okay? Expectations, if you think right now is a good time to get as much money as possible in a market, you think future the market's going to contract, they could, in the short run, push supply outward, okay? Other goods, so competing goods will also kind of change your supply. Also complementary goods, okay? If you have hot dog buns going up and people are buying those up, then all of a sudden there's going to be more demand. And if you're reading that demand, they might look ahead with expectations and then account for that and move their supply up. Number of sellers, that's a big thing. If more sellers enter the market, there's just going to be more supply in general, okay? And we see this all the time. Like, if there's not very many people in the market that are selling, the supply is kind of restricted. But if you have a lot more sellers, that's going to shift supply out. And if you ever have sellers leave the market because the market's going down and not very profitable, then supply goes even further down. So, some of individual firms' supply. So again, what they do, they go through and they point all these things. So remember, these are quantities supplied. So all these dots are quantity supplied. B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and it could go on all the way through. That gives the supply curve, okay? Is it a straight line? No, it changes. Based on your ability to supply, based on if it's worth it to you to supply, businesses are going to supply differently. It's that simple, okay? So here at higher prices, though, we do know at a higher price, more is supplied. That's the main gist of that, okay? Okay, again, if a supply curve shifts right, it increases. The supply curve shifts left, it decreases. So if anything shifts left, it decreases. Whether it's supply or demand, if it's a supply curve shifts right or a demand curve shifts right, it increases. Okay? And again, a change in price. Does a change in price change the line? No! A change in price moves along the line. The prices are always there. And if you change price, you're just moving on the line. And it's actually going to be this way now. You're just going to move somewhere on the line, okay? You're just going to move on the line. That's it. However, when you're moving along the line, that's quantity demanded, or supply. In this case, supply is going to change. It's quantity based, okay? The entire line shifts only if you actually have a change in the environment, in the marketplace, okay? And not just price. Equilibrium. Oh, here we go. Occurs at a price in which quantity demanded equals quantity supplied, okay? So we have equilibriums in markets. Only one price and quantity are compatible. So if I have one line going down and one line going up, it's going to create a big X. Where that X crosses, that is technically the equilibrium point. That is where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. Now again, I'm going to make sure this is very clear. Supply never equals demand. ever. I always want things super cheap, and when I buy them, and the seller wants to sell them super high, we will never be equal. However, quantity demanded can equal quantity supplied. So a point can equal the lines themselves. Supply will never be the same line as demand. They are actually inverse lines. However, there is one point in which the quantities will equal. Okay, 1 point. And right there's that point. So if you follow that demand curve, market demand and market supply, where is equilibrium? Where is X mark the spot on here? Where's that 1 point it equals? Well, it's where the X is. A surplus, okay, that's gonna go over, and we're gonna show you surpluses right now. Okay. X and Y, the difference there is the surplus. So right now, if I charge $25 in the marketplace, okay, and let's say 25 is the going price for tutoring right now, and that's what people are charging. If people in general are charging that, there's going to be a surplus at that price. Okay? Because right now, 25 people are going to demand it, and about, well, it's between 50 and 75, so 60 people demand it. So between 25 and 60, you do the math, that's how much of a surplus you have in that area. And what happens when there's a surplus? People start lowering their prices because they want to actually tutor people and they want to make more money. So there's these market forces that shift you down towards equilibrium. So if you're sitting there as a tutor not making money because no one's coming, because they don't want to pay that amount of money, you start lowering your prices so people are doing something so you can get paid. Okay? Also, you can have a shortage. Okay? Let's say at $15, we look at market supply, we have about 20 people supplying and 50 people wanting it. What's that mean? That means I'm overbooked. And if I'm overbooked, I can charge more. And so I start charging more for my services at that point. And there's going to be a push to push that price up towards equilibrium, which is where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. Again, that's where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. And again, demand, the curve, the line, the demand line curve and the supply curve line will never equal each other. Only the point where they cross. And it's the quantity that's demanded and the quantity supplied. But there are market forces. If you've ever got a price that's above or below, market forces tend to shift things to that equilibrium point. Because when there's a shortage, suppliers figure that out real quick and they start charging more because they always want more money. If there's a surplus, they don't want things going unused and they start getting rid of it. And then they get to where there's an equilibrium. And so the key word is they say it naturally moves to equilibrium. However, even if something moves natural, that does not mean it moves fast. Sometimes it's a bit slow, and that's where people get mad, is when we have surpluses and shortages that are slow and aren't being fixed very quickly. Okay? And right there is equilibrium price. So if we want an equilibrium price where quantity supplied equals quantity demanded, we charge about $20, it looks like. Could be 21. It doesn't have little tick marks. Equilibrium price and quantity reflect a compromise between buyers and sellers. Okay, so it's a compromise. Why is it a compromise? Because demand and supply will never equal each other. The lines will never equal. The lines are in opposite directions. However, they do cross at one point, and that's where things tend to be okay to a degree. Okay? No other price yields quantity demanded equal to quantity supplied. Okay? The lines we have, even though they're curves, they're not doing crazy wave stuff. They're not recrossing over each other. There's one price theoretically there. Okay? Now this is another key point. Equilibrium does not imply that everyone is happy. Okay? In a compromise, are people happy when there's a compromise? Because that's what it's saying. Equilibrium price and quantity reflect a compromise between buyers and sellers. No. Does not imply that everyone is happy with the prevailing price or quantity, because not everybody's part of that area. Okay, buyers still want it higher. Buyers still want it lower as far as price, and sellers still want it higher. Okay, so it's a compromise, and some people, even at that compromise price, still can't afford it if they're buying, and some sellers will still refuse to sell a certain amount. They'll restrict their supply a bit at that price level. Okay, so people are holding back on both parts. Okay. Suppose the price is not the equilibrium price. Okay, a shortage occurs if price is too low. Okay, so quantity demanded is more than quantity supplied. So you look at those 2 points, you compare them. Okay, where's quantity demanded? Where's quantity supplied? Okay, if quantity demanded is more than quantity supplied, you have a shortage. You're just comparing 2 points, and you can literally compare the numbers on the 2 points, and that's how big the shortage is. Okay, a surplus occurs if a price is too high. Okay, surplus, price is too high, quantity demanded versus quantity supplied. Okay. And remember, unsatisfied sellers mark the price down to the equilibrium price. There's going to be forces both ways, whether it's a shortage or surplus, trying to get to equilibrium. Okay? This is a little, it's obvious, but not known unless I tell you, but this equilibrium is all the other prices. If you're not in equilibrium, then by default, you are in disequilibrium, and you're getting pushed towards equilibrium. Okay? Equilibrium, price, and quantity change whenever supply or demand change. Oh, yes, that's right. Supply and demand have shifts in them. Technology changes. People's tastes change. Things change on those lines. And when those lines move, so does the equilibrium. Okay? So it occurs when some determinants of supply or demand change. When supply or demand curves shift, a new equilibrium is established. Okay? So here's our original. Okay? Naturally moves to equilibrium. This is our original that we have here. There's a shift, okay? All of a sudden, people really, really, really want the product, okay? Taste change, okay? It's a new fad. People want bell-bottom jeans. If you don't have bell-bottom jeans, you're not cool. If you don't know what bell-bottom jeans are, they're the best thing ever. They're from the 70s. Wasn't part of my era, obviously, but it's always interesting to look, okay? Now, what happens with this shift of demand? Well, what happened to the overall equilibrium price? Equilibrium price rose, okay? And also, what's our new quantity of demand and supply at? Okay? So price goes up, and quantity demand and quantity supplied also goes up. So overall, there's going to be more of the market happening at that point. So whenever you see a shift in demand, do more things usually get sold? Yes, because people want them, and they're being sold at a higher price. Okay. Governments may intervene in markets and set limits on price or quantity. Does this happen? Yeah, government wants to get involved, and sometimes it's a good idea, sometimes not so good. Okay. We create what's called a price ceiling. That's where the government sets a maximum price. So if you're in a house and you have a ceiling, you can't get past it. You're trying to punch through a ceiling, and it's keeping you down. You can't get past the ceiling. Okay. Okay, and that's going to create a market shortage, okay? A price floor is a minimum price, so you're standing on it. You can't go below a floor. A floor, you can't go below it. If you're in a house, you can't go below the floor unless you're causing damage or found some special secret passage, okay? Quantity demanded is less than quantity supplied, and that's going to create a surplus. And this is where the government is price setting, okay? Okay, examples include minimum wage and price supports for agriculture. Okay, so minimum wage, it sets a price floor. Okay, and so when we look at these things, we can see it up here. Okay, we'll do housing right here because we already got the graph for housing. And suppose the government imposes a rent ceiling. Okay, so that government price down there, that's the PC price. Okay, normally in this market, prices would be at PE. Okay. This is where people would want to charge, and then you would have a compromise between buyers and sellers at that point. But if you're setting it as the government down below there, okay, at PC, you're going to have a whole lot of people wanting it today. At A, you got a large amount of demand, and B, you don't have that much supply at that price, and so you have a huge amount of a shortage where people can't get housing, okay? They just can't at that price. Because people aren't willing to supply it at that price. And so you're gonna have a lot of people leaving that market in that price. You're gonna have a lot of people entering that market that want it at that price. You're gonna have a big shortage. Does it allow some poor people to get housing? Yes, it does allow that, which is a good thing. However, you're gonna have a shortage if you're just setting price and you're not giving them more money so that they can actually participate and buy housing at the normal equilibrium. So there's the housing shortage right there if you're doing a rent ceiling. If you're not actually giving the people more money so that they can be a part of a higher demand curve. So, but if you're just doing rent control as is and just price setting, you're going to cause a shortage. And if you look at this, it almost looks like a house, okay? You see the supply and demand where it looks like a roof of the house here, and right here would be the ceiling. That's the way you can remember it's a ceiling, okay? Think of it like a house. Look at that. Can you guys see the house there? Okay, you look at the blue line, that's a roof. Look at the red line, that's a roof. And then the housing shortage, that's the ceiling of the house, and then you just have a house going down from B to A, okay? That's one way you can remember that's a ceiling, okay? A ceiling means you can't go past it. Government-imposed prices may create a wrong mix of output, increased tax burden, alter distribution of income, political favoritism. All these things are suspect. These can happen. I mean, sometimes the government does need to come and just help people out. I mean, you just need it in some cases, but also these are some things can happen as well. Apparent inefficiencies of price, control implying markets, outcomes are best left alone. So when possible, because of inefficiencies, you let prices meet their way out, okay? It's laissez-faire doctrine, and you're hoping that the market self-corrects itself because things are pushing towards equilibrium. Price and quantity are determined solely by the interaction of independent market participants. Market management revolves around, we've already gone over this several times in other chapters, what, who, and for whom. Market outcomes are optimal, not perfect, okay? That's our thing. Market outcomes are optimal, meaning we're going to make a compromise. Compromises are not perfect. Some people do get hurt a lot more in the compromise than other people. Some people benefit more than others in a compromise. Optimal outcomes are the best possible given limited resources. Market participants' choices maximize the likelihood of attaining their goals. So everyone's going to work for their own good. And then it goes through everything we've gone over before. So overall, if you had an issue with supply and demand, re-watch it. Re-look at it. And remember, quantity supplied is a point on the line. Quantity demanded is a point on the line. But the demand line and the demand curve is the entire line. And those only shift based on those determinants. Okay, so if we have new technology for supply, if it's demand, it could be a taste change. You can have all the different things that actually change the entire line of it. Okay, but if you're just changing price, the line stays and you're just going from one point to the next point. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you survived. Like I said, this is the Beast chapter. This is chapter 3. If you made it through, good for you. If you didn't make it through, you're probably not listening because you're not here. So have a good one. This is chapter 3. Take care, everyone.